If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. A Wanderer in Angkor by Brunton. I follow a rough, red-earthed, narrow footpath through the thick jungle, disturbing the little creatures which make their home in the bush. The tortuous way disappears at places, and it is the easiest thing in the world to lose oneself entirely in this dense undergrowth where there are no landmarks. 2 hours rambling are needed to bring in sight a most important Buddhist relic of the lost Hindu-Buddhist civilization of Cambodia. With what pleasure do I greet the great paved platform, shaped like a giant fallen cross, which suddenly thrusts itself up amongst all this tangled forest of slender areca palms, dark banana trees, and feathered cocoa groves, whose foliage hems me in like an encircling wall. A sandstone stela still remains to tell unwittingly the mournful story of life's impermanence. It is carved with lengthy inscriptions, which cover each of the 4 sides in the usual style of the country. 2 languages are used, the one Sanskrit and the other Old Khmer. It bears a 1,000-year-old date and narrates the foundation by King Yasovarman of a Buddhist monastery which stood upon this platform. The refuge was clearly a wooden and brick structure, for nothing at all remains today. The monastic hall has crumbled into dust, the monks' houses have vanished, and their little chapel is as dead as themselves. Yet one thing was not made of such perishable stuff, and has therefore lived to appear to modern gaze. It is an enormous, isolated statue of the teacher Gautama, well preserved and calmly defiant of the test of time. Some pious living monks of the neighborhood have built a tiled roof to protect the enduring granite of their master's head, but their act seems more of a gesture of reverence than one of need. The once worshipped image of the Buddha of Tep Pranam is beautiful even in its desertion, even after the wreck and death of the monastery which surrounded it. I know that I am in the presence of an artwork of ineffable charm. The relic gazes down without reproach at the few who come to witness its pathetic loneliness. It expects nothing from men and women, though men and women still expect much from it. Do not occasional pilgrims still find their way across the steaming jungles and forests of Indochina to tremble to the ground at its feet and beg for strength, wisdom, peace, children, health, truth, or fortune, things which we poor humans need to make us happy? Do they not still piously place a few wild jasmines, or some fragrant tuberose, or a handful of freshly gathered lovely lotuses on its ornately carved throne? For the Mongolian mind looks upon important images of the Buddha as being invested with special spiritual power. The belief is not without its justification, for when the Chinese first dedicate such a figure, a reverential magical rite called Kai Kuang is performed. This means opening the light, and is accompanied by the actual cutting open of the pupils in the image's eyes. With this act, some fragment of the Buddha's magnetism is thought to have entered the figure. Every idol which has been properly prepared by initiated lamas is therefore regarded as being enveloped with an invisible aura of authentic power. The bright glare of the sun dazzles my pupils as I look upward at the fine lineaments of the attractive face which confronts me. The characteristically long lobes of its ears are symbolic, thus they hear the whole world's anguished cries. The half-open eyes, which stare so abstractedly upon this mundane existence, convey a peculiar sensation to my mind. Something seems to live within them, some archaic spirit who has attained to the apogee of human wisdom and who now dwells immersed in transcendence, appears to hide behind the serene curtain of those lids. The woolly curls of hair are arranged, according to the stiff conventional fashion, in regular rows all over the Buddha's head. The cotton monk's robe hangs tightly and assumes the mold of the body's lines. The mild, gently expressive stone lips speak to me silently with a message that comes like an unexpected voice out of the infinite. The legs are crossed upon a lotus-shaped throne. The left palm is placed on the folded knees, but the fingers of the right hand point downwards, for Gautama is thus symbolically taking the whole earth as a witness that nirvana has truly been attained, that the baffling mystery of the finite ego has been solved. I squat on a moss-grown flagstone before the Buddha, my mind lulled into a half-reverie, my nostrils sensing the weird scent of the jungle close at hand. Timid squirrels with bushy tails scurry up and down the trees. A parakeet is perched on the end of a bough. Other birds perch between the gables of the modern roof and whistle gaily over the statue's head or swoop down to its feet. It has been sunk in perpetual dream through the centuries, the whistling birds and humming mosquitoes unheard, its splendors gone, and the great gilded altars as though they never were. Somehow its peace is inviolate. By its size alone, the benign figure dominates the forest clearing, where it lies unfettered by buildings. But it dominates my soul by its silent communication of self-sovereignty, of worldwide compassion, and of luminous understanding. All the immemorial wisdom of old Asia is gathered within that graven head, held behind those half-lowered eyes, and compressed into this beatific smile. I am reminded of that still more gigantic figure, the colossal golden-eyed Diabatsu, the Buddha of infinite light, at Kamakura, set in the most spiritually magnetized garden in Japan, where I fell into a trance of unforgettable ecstasy whence none could bring me back from noon till eve. Chapter 2. Dawn brings a sky of purest blue. At the forest's edge, both bird and insect chant in delirious joy at the sun's arrival. Butterflies with enormous wings but frail bodies flutter gaily among the wildflowers. I gaze upward at 5 tremendous domed towers which point from the base earth through the warm, windless air to high heaven, and which announce abruptly the neighborhood of the Wat, Angkor's largest and most impressive monument. Even the portion which is visible at this distance above a screen of lofty palms seems complacently satisfied with its own grandeur and possesses the pyramidic pride of Byron's lines. I cross an old paved causeway which spans the immensely deep moat that surrounds the Leviathan structure of the entire temple, and thus turns it into an island. The moat is nearly 4 miles long, and broader than any which ever encircled feudal castle in the West. The raised causeway is long too, no less than 700 feet. It is the only approach to the forecourt which presents a broad flight of steps. On each side, a gigantic stone cobra rears a 7-fold head, like the sentinel that it symbolically is, while other serpents frame a balustrade for the front portion of their bodies. I plunge into a jungle of stonework and walk rapidly around for more than an hour, merely to take bearings and form a rough mental picture of the place. The Wat must be the heaviest stone building set upon our planet's surface after the Egyptian pyramid and before the skyscraper era began. It is a veritable artificial hill. The mind is arrested by the strange architectural plan which seeks to impose all its formidable massiveness on the beholder at a single glance. For here are 10 acres of ground covered with a colossal building, galleries. Chambers and courts sheath the central pile, which is arranged by cleverly graded perspectives to assume the general outline of a truncated pyramid adorned by domes. As at the pyramid, the enormous blocks are put together with joints of paper-thin fineness and fitted with the same absolute precision. As at the pyramid, the modern beholder must wonder gapingly how such intimidating blocks were brought here and hauled into position by the primitive appliances then available. For several of the smooth, delicately grained sandstones and limonites which I see weigh 6 tons each, and I know there are no quarries less than 20 miles distant. As at the pyramid, The square base is brought by successive terraces to a tapering summit. Here, however, the terraces, as they recede inwards, are set with surrounding courts to rise in and above the last, whilst they increase in proportionate height as they ascend farther from the ground. This pyramidical rise imparts an aspiring sublimity to the Wat.
What archaeologist will dare to assert that the same hand which planned the pyramids of Egypt, Karnak, and the 1,000 ruins now crumbling to oblivion on the sandy banks of the Nile did not erect the monumental Angkor Wat of Cambodia, wrote Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine. Why is the pyramid, a four-sided figure, the most mysterious and most ancient monument form to be found in either the Western or Eastern hemispheres? Hitherto, nobody has revealed its connection with the equally most ancient and most mysterious esoteric doctrine, that of the Sacred Four. I stand again at the frontal portico, whence a long avenue of gray columns stretches to the right and left, enclosing a dim corridor and a darker wall. I pass under the pediment and project a light upon the carvings of men, beasts, and gods which ornament the wall in crowds. Here are fragments of the old Indian epics unrolled as storied tableaux whilst I walk. They run in a continuous frieze, not in panels, and bear the appearance of time-blackened tapestry. And they run for not less than half a mile around the temple. Valmiki's verse is reinscribed here as a wordless mural and appears in a tumultuous profusion of chiseled pictures, once painted and gilded, but now bereft of all original coloring. The Mahabharata and the Harivamsa are here too. I observe the familiar faces of ancient gods, Yama and Shiva, Surya and Vishnu. I rise up 2 staircases to an altitude of at least 100 feet in the air. Carved doorways, roofed galleries, and little side chapels flank the court. To approach the edge is to be rewarded by an ample view of the environing countryside. I gaze down. All around there stretches the apparent infinitude of the green Cambodian forest, which brushes the very walls of the temple, as the enveloping sand once brushed the very face of the buried Sphinx. Here an ape swings from branch to branch, disturbed the nested kites and mynas. There a gleam of distant water betrays the Nile of Cambodia, the river Mekong, which, with its tributaries and lakes, supported Khmer life and soil with its annual overflow. But as I return and pace the uneven stone floor, I am struck by the Quaker-like plainness of supporting pillar and surrounding wall. And as I advance through a profoundly shadowy corridor, as my eyes grow accustomed to the darkness, I search for and find at last at its farthest end the penumbral shrine, the Holy of Holies of Angkor Wat, placed as in all Khmer-built fanes in the precise center of the topmost tier. Over its head rears the sumptuously ornamented central cupola, 200 feet high and shaped like a delicate lotus bud. The Chinese envoy who visited Angkor more than 700 years ago found the tower covered with gold and noticed that its gleaming height could be seen from any point in town. Here and there I perceive the charred ends of joss sticks, which have been stuck between the joints of paving stones in the floor. I am not alone. A pious, gentle-faced bonze appears within the circle of light cast by my torch, chanting some half-whispered words before glowing incense sticks and a few flowers thrown around the statue. He seems simple, a man of primitive mentality. I doubt whether he can comprehend the profound significance of his master's doctrine, but I do not doubt the fervency of his prayers, nor the depth of his faith. I show him my own rosary and let him marvel at the tiny Buddha picture hidden within one of the beads. We soon fall into conversation. His voice drops back to a whisper as he begins to narrate a strange story connected with this Holy of Holies. Once an Indian king wanted to send a priceless gift to the great Genghis Khan of China. So he chose a small Buddha image, one of his greatest treasures. It was carved out of a flawless emerald. Hundreds of years earlier, the Buddhist Arhat Nagasena had the image made under his orders and then bestowed his power upon it. Much mystic virtue was given it. It became famous. The Emerald Buddha passed through the dangers of war and fire. It was brought to Ceylon. 1,300 years ago, exactly to the present year, it was sent to the great emperor with an escort of attendant priests and a set of Buddhist scriptures. But the convoy was wrecked in the China Sea off the Cambodian coast. The figure was brought to the king of the Khmers, who took the event as a sign and thenceforth did much to make Buddhism flourish in his kingdom. From that time, too, the Cambodian worldly power began to triumph and its wealth to increase. After the building of the Wat, the Emerald Buddha was enthroned in this shrine which you now behold. It had been among us for nearly 700 years. Our capital had risen to the height of luxury. Much gold had enriched our rulers and warriors, but weakened their fiber. Then karma struck down our empire. The Thai people of Siam attacked mercilessly in large numbers, devastated the country, and broke into Angkor. Our king hastily walled up the 4 doors of the shrine, hoping to protect the image. The entire population fled to the south, but its whereabouts was guessed, and the walls reopened. The Thais carried it away in triumph. Thereafter, our land never recovered and sank into a pitiful state.
The old monk showed me the 4 openings which formerly surrounded the innermost cubicle, but which were later walled up against such tragic circumstances. There comes to my mind a picture of the palace at Bangkok. I see the gorgeously beautiful royal temple. Set on an ornate lofty throne, which is heavy with gold and studded with gems, there rests a green stone figure of the Buddha. It is the mascot of Siam, the powerful talisman behind the country's fortunes, and above all, so a member of the government assures me, the preciously guarded protector of her political independence in a land-hungry world. At the request of my monk companions, I take part in a rite of homage to the figure, to receive mayhap a shadow of its protective influence. For it is the famous Emerald Buddha, now jealously marked by Japanese, Chinese, and Hindus, not to speak of treasure-hunting white men. But sentries with bayoneted rifles perpetually confront the temple door. Chapter 3. Other wanderings on other days bring me to many ruins which lie within and beyond Angkor. Hundreds of miles away, there still remain, imprisoned in jungle which spreads with such swift and extraordinary abundance, many scattered ruins of this lost Khmer world. But I must keep my pen within bounds of Angkor and tell briefly of one more place that impresses itself upon memory, of Prerup, a grandiose temple topped by a terraced pyramid and stretched on an elaborate base 400 feet long. A long flight of wide steps intimidate me with their steepness, but once climbed, I stroll between carved goddesses into a shrine of the pyramid. A couple of lacquered Buddhas fit with some uneasiness into this Brahmanically styled fane. The sun, which gleams so weakly near the forest-filled horizon, has passed 1,100 times around the zodiacal circle since Prerup was planned. The view around is admirable and demands my immediate homage, but sight of an unusual little structure resting on a paved platform within the east portal sends me scurrying down the steps again. A close examination confirms the first thought. It is a rectangular sarcophagus, which, save for a double line of reeded ornament running around the external face, appears to be strangely like the famed sarcophagus which has rested for thousands of years inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. A grooved edge at the top indicates where a lid once fitted the stone box. Common folklore calls it a crematorium, and imagine the bodies of aristocratic dead being once brought here for burning. But a French archaeologist placed in charge of the Angkor ruins confesses that this seems mere myth and is certainly unhistorical. However, he has no other explanation to advance. The key to the problem can be quickly found. It is the symbolic vessel of resurrection. In this coffin-like box, there was placed the body of a chosen candidate for initiation into the Grand Mysteries, an institution belonging not only to Cambodian faith, but also to the chief pagan religions. He was plunged through the power transmitted by his Hierophant into a profound trance, the Yoga Nidra, or yoga sleep of the Hindus. From this he arose at dawn, psychologically changed, emotionally calmer, and spiritually aware. The temporary tomb symbolized death, or end of the unenlightened period of the candidate's life. Henceforth, he bore on his soul the fundamental imprint of esoteric knowledge. Secluded caves, underground crypts, and hidden grottos served the same purpose as these sarcophagi guarded behind locked doors. Buddha initiated his closest disciple in the Saptaparni cave near Mount Baibar, and the methods of Druid high priests were not dissimilar. With the decay and final disappearance of this system of initiation, these sarcophagi fell into disuse until priests appropriated them again for use as royal burial graves or as aristocratic crematoriums. Hence arose the later legends of the pyramid being a pharaoh's tomb and of the Pre-Rup being a burning place for the dead. A few broken standing columns alone remain of the sanctuary in which the sarcophagus was confined and guarded. The queer Khmer roof, famed for its tortuous jutting horned cornices set at odd angles, has vanished, and the centuries of mystic rites with it. I leave through a doorway fringed with creepers and bearded with moss. The air of neglected loneliness lies pathetically on this place, now abandoned to snakes which hide in dark holes and centipedes which creep under the mossy stones. Such is the city of ruins which I found in northern Cambodia, but 7 centuries ago the capital of a great empire, and now silhouetted on the nightly horizon of tigers when they emerge from their diurnal sleep. Please visit us at www.paulbrunton.org. Also at Paul Brunton Archive, pbarchives.org. Paul Brunton's books are available at www.larsonpublications.com.